Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Big Dreams, Great Teams podcast. Today, I have an incredible guest. I have Peta Serras, who is the founder of Professional Babe, a business advisory and email marketing business. She has a signature program called Give Good Email, and she hosts a fabulous podcast called The Business Fondle. Peta has 15 years entrepreneurial experience. She's an email marketing whiz, as I said, but she's also a branding goddess. And it's all these things together that position her to teach businesses how to scale in a profitable way. And that's why she's here today, because like me, she's obsessed with profitability, streamlining what you can in your business and getting it right from the get-go. So today is going to be a great episode. We get to pick the brains of somebody who has started multiple businesses and is really focused on profitability, on automations, on streamlining to keep those costs low, including team costs. So not hiring unnecessarily. We're going to be talking about that as well. Really focused on profit and paying yourself. So a very big warm welcome to you, Peta. Thanks for being here.
Gosh, what an introduction.
Would you like to start with sharing a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey? You know, you started multiple businesses, but tell us all the things. How did it come about?
It's so funny because I'm doing a lot of in-person events lately, and I've got a Pilates DVD, and I love kind of pulling it out and telling people I've been in business this long that I have a tangible fitness DVD, and I had television commercials. And it's really funny that you can see people's face change when they're like, oh yeah, she has done this a long time. I didn't even know that they made DVDs anymore. So it's so funny, isn't it? Like it's like anyone these days can have a book, but it's like a DVD. How does that even happen? So I started my first business in 2009, which was a Pilates studio in my hometown of regional New South Wales. I, at the time, just was obsessed with Pilates, and I really could see like a huge vision for not only Pilates, but I guess everything that I could do in business. I had that business for 8 years, and in that time, I became a health writer for almost every publication in Australia. I had a Pilates DVD that I shipped internationally and had like a lot of projects within that business. I sold it in 2017 and actually was doing my side hustle, which I started during Professional Babe, which was called Professional Babe, and was writing for magazines as well. And it's really funny how you can look back and at the time you're like, oh, this doesn't really make sense. And you always can look back and you're like, it's so interesting how everything that I have done, it's like it's paved the way for all of the knowledge that I have in the business that I have now. I tell people I have the best job in the world because people come to me with an incredible vision for what they want their business to look like, or even, you know, they might know what they want their business to look like, but they really understand how they want their life to look, especially if they have kids and a family. And then I work with them to actualize that. And one way that we do that is through email marketing and automation.
Love. I guess I get a bit of a sense that because you started what I consider a traditional business in the past, you know, where you have to pay rent. It's like the importance of profitability, knowing your costs, you know, streamlining, automations, all these things are just so important. And I think that often if you haven't had that baseline experience, you can also like skip over that and be like, oh, I'm just going to spend. But like, you know, as somebody who started a yoga studio herself, like, you know, opening the doors on that first day, having paid a month's rent, you know, before even having the ability to open, like, let alone, you know, bring revenue in, you know, it's really, you've got to focus on the right things from the outset. So I love that you have shared with everybody that's kind of your background and that frames a lot of the work you do. So love that. So let's dive into email marketing. And I have to say, I absolutely love the brand that you have built for yourself. It is so unique and you are literally known for email marketing. And I think you're so great at positioning yourself for that. So go you. But can you talk to us about why email marketing? Why do you think it's so important? And what impact have you seen it make on your clients' businesses when they get it right?
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think a lot of people assume that I have like a marketing background. And I'm always like, no, I have a business background. And this very much was something that I implemented within my business because at the time I reached this bottleneck where I'm like, I do not have enough time, but I also am not at a point where I can actually hire. I very much make decisions where I don't do things off a good month where I'm like, you know, we need to see this through for 6 months. So if I don't have 6 months surplus, I don't actually commit to anything. And I was looking at everything that was happening in my business and I noticed that I kind of had a couple things. I felt like I had a bit of a sales block where it's like I was doing things very manually, and having an online business, especially if you sell courses or programs and you want sales to come through at all hours, I could see that that was blocking things. But then I also had a lot of admin and a lot of client questions. And again, I didn't really have capacity to hire. So I was like, okay, let's look at this logically. Let's look at everything that's happening. And then it just made sense to use email because I'd had the software, and it's so interesting that I wasn't really utilizing it. And I look back at when I had the studio and how, again, like I had a part-time receptionist that would have to physically ring everyone up. And I even look back to that business and it's like, oh, I could have automated a lot of this, and I could have gotten them to actually have done different things to grow the business instead of actually just staying on top of stuff that was like an everyday thing. So I think where I have a bit of a different approach is I actually remove it from the marketing category. Because I think this is where a lot of entrepreneurs can think, well, I'm already marketing because I've got a thriving Instagram account, and maybe we're doing some like meta ads, or maybe we're on Pinterest, or maybe we're here. And they're like, oh, okay, stuff is still getting stuck or bottlenecked in a particular way. And I worked out really quickly, and you would have this too, where one of the problems I think at times, and I've been there with hiring, it's like, it's not you. You're not hiring you. And that's what's so brilliant. You're getting different eyes with a different skill set. But I think from founders, there's this real reluctance of kind of handing over part of the business to someone else where it's like, it's not their baby. It's not the thing that they've created. And where I think this is just so beautiful, it's like email is essentially a clone of the entrepreneur. And it's something that they can do once on an incredible day and have that continually working for them.
Love. So it's not like you have to worry about hiring someone who writes in the right tone or matches the person's tone or make sure they don't, use all inappropriate emojis or any of those things. It's actually like you get to write the things the way you want to. And I like that you said on a good day, because I think that's important, right? Like sometimes we feel like writing and sometimes we don't. And then that just, you just dial that up and that does the thing. Okay. So tell us about how, for everybody listening, give me an example of what's manually being done by someone, a typical client, and what they put in place from an email perspective and what they no longer need to do. Is it inquiries? Is it nurturing? I'm just throwing some things out there.
It's so funny because I was like, gosh, where do we start? Because there's just so much. One of the ways could be, and this is something really interesting where I feel a lot of people kind of will forget about, and it's the onboarding aspect. It's like someone has given you money for whatever it may be. This could be a retainer if you're a marketing agency, if you're a course provider, they've just purchased a course, or a Pilates studio, they've just purchased their first class pack. And I think a lot of people really prioritize this beautiful sales aspect, but then things will fall over when it comes to onboarding and experience. And I think a lot of the time, I don't think business owners like look at things and they're like, oh, let me just do a really bad job of this. I feel like we always go into it with, I would call like a good days mentality. And I've done this before where I've looked at things and I'm like, oh, I'm going to create a list of people to follow up and just see how they're going with this thing and just check in with them on Instagram with a voice message. And then because I have a business happens or something happens or a curveball happens. And that is just continually pushed to a point where it just doesn't happen. And this is probably the most basic thing that every business can implement is a beautiful onboarding automation once someone becomes a customer. And this really does two things. I have like a 9-step process to craft any automation that will benefit the customer and benefit the business. And this can even be as simple as, especially if you feel like that you struggle holding boundaries, which I find with some clients, especially if they work with clients, communicating, hey, I clock off at 4:00, or I'm not contactable on weekends, or for me to do my job, I need this from you. And these may have been conversations that have happened in that pre-work, but then clients just need a reminder because you're also dealing with busy entrepreneurs as well that are running their business. So this is just a beautiful way to kind of re-communicate that relationship, establish boundaries, and even sometimes hold a boundary that can feel like a bit terrifying to actually say. It's back to what I said. It's like, you just need to have a good day to do this, where you're like, yeah, I'm feeling powerful. I am feeling like that I can hold this boundary. And you can craft that. And that is probably one of the most simple but impactful automations in a business. And you can even do things in this like sell and continue to sell, which is really important, especially for people that have like a retainer situation with their clients or a membership, Or if you have a business where you can look at everything that you sell and there's this really beautiful thread from people buying one thing, going to the next, going to the next. There's a stat by Harvard Business Review, which I'm obsessed with. And it's if you just increase your customer retention by 5%, your profit can increase by 25%. I think it's like 25 to 95%. It's some number that just doesn't even feel logical, but it's because I think we forget about the time and the energy of the cost of acquiring a new customer and what it actually looks like to kind of keep someone in our business and keep that customer happy. And it's like, I tell all my clients, if this is just one thing that you can do, keep people paying for you, because the best customer is someone that's giving you money. And this is something that can easily be automated.
I love that. To your point, I think that often we forget that we are the people who've been through the customer journey before. Our customer isn't. I had a friend who was talking to me, who was a wedding dress designer, and she was talking to me about like how frustrating it was because just before a client picks up their dress, 2 weeks out from the wedding, they've lost 5 kilos. It all needs to be adjusted, et cetera, et cetera. And she was saying that it's just this last minute flurry. And then she has to have a price conversation with them. And she was talking, it was stressful. And I sort of said to her, but they've never got married before. Yet that 70% of the time this happens, et cetera, et cetera. So how can you set up a process where you let them know from the outset, hey, this might happen. If it happens, this is what we're going to do about it. And it's kind of, I think we forget sometimes it's like we're the experienced one in the journey. So I love what you said, but through having an onboarding automation, set the boundaries, remind them, hey, you might have an SOS that comes up. If that happens, do this. If you can't log into your system, do this, whatever it is, because you're the one who knows the typical things that come up. And rather than having like a person or a team member at the ready to deal with it, you can preempt it and automate it and, reduce the cost associated with it.
Yeah, 100%.
So I love how practical that is. Something I've seen you talk about on your socials, I think is, and please correct me when I get this wrong, is it set your business up for a bad day, not a good day?
Yeah, bad days business model.
Tell us about that.
It's really interesting. And I think you would relate to this, having a business that so heavily relied on your labor of having like your yoga studio. I have my Pilates studio, and I very much got paid when I physically went into work and I taught a class. And yes, I was doing other things, like I was writing for magazines, had the DVD, but when I looked at the bulk of my business, it was so reliant on someone's labor to get money. And it's so interesting when I can look back and how stressed I was. I didn't realize I was stressed because I think it's like you don't know what you don't know. Well, I can look at myself now compared to back then and just how stressful it is when you are relying on a really great day to run your business. And I think that we can do this. Like an example that I use is people are often asked about their ideal day in business. And they'll be like, oh, I wake up and the sun's out and I'm ovulating. My hair's incredible. And someone's just paid me $10,000. And then I've done this and then I've done this. And we're looking at things from probably like a day that for most people would be 1% of their whole working year. And we're designing our business based on this and not based on reality. And it could be that we have children that get sick, or our team has children that also get sick, or that we have school holidays, or that things happen, or that we are a human dealing with other humans and we rely on other people kind of making decisions. It's not like we're robots. And this is something that I think even when I've had clients that have team, and it's so interesting that they're hiring a team because they're like, oh, I can't do all of this myself. Like, we've got kids and I get sick, but then they have these really unrealistic expectations. It's like that their team is always going to be there too. And I'm like, your team is a person as well. So, this whole notion of like a bad day's business model is really looking at the business as if you have the worst day and your team has the worst day and everything falls over, how can we ensure that you are profitable for those days? And this is often what I hear when people say, I don't have the time to do this. I don't have the time to work on my business. And it's like, but if you need time, then the plan is faulty. Because if the plan can only be executed and if you can only work on your business when you have a free schedule, it's going to fall over when you're busy. I'm a firm believer. It's like when stuff is not working well, there is incredible data there. Because if we can get you profitable and when things are working not well at all, anytime you have a great day, that's cream on top. Like you are just going to be laughing.
I love that so much. I feel like I'm going to borrow that and air quote continuously, build a bad day business? Because, having been in business for myself for 14 years and you've been in business for 15 years, you have a lot of bad days, even just like as an individual, let alone adding the layers of, children and whatnot into it. And it's whether it's even just you not feeling on form or, you being sick, getting wisdom teeth out, whatever it is. And I think that's perhaps this is why so many businesses don't actually get through that, 5-year mark. What is the statistic? That's that 50% of the businesses actually get through, the first 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, it's wild.
In Australia, like it's really wild. And I wonder if that's because if they're being set up for good days and that's not the reality, then actually you get to a point where you go, it's too hard, it's not profitable enough, and I need to do something else.
Yeah, I think too, a lot of people are really primed to think that stuff will get better from time passing. They think, oh, this is just like wine. We'll just let it sit on the shelf and it's going to taste good. Where it's like, but it's not like that. The thing is, it's all about like intentional effort. And if time is passing, but stuff stays the same, this is where entrepreneurs end up with the same business and where they feel that stuff kind of isn't growing. It's like, time can pass and that is fantastic, but you need to make sure that you are growing as an entrepreneur, that your strategy is growing, that your team is growing, and that you're not kind of looking at what you were doing 2 years ago and stuff is the same.
Love that. Intentional effort. Awesome. Tell me about AI. What's your opinion? What changes have you seen happening? Let's just go there.
It's really interesting that when everyone was getting Chat GPT, I don't want to say really reluctant, but I think, one of my jobs was working in online publishing and really required me to work super, super, super fast. And I was trying to use AI and I'm like, this just feels like it's taking so much longer than me doing something manually, which I'm like, this is really interesting. But I've noticed, and what's been so fantastic is that I think that a lot of tech programs that we use now have incredible AI features that just make things so, so simple. And where I think that this is amazing, and I've been probably guilty of this in the past, is it's like when you are the expert and you have team helping you, it can be really hard if you need them to do something, but they don't have your skill set and your knowledge to go and do the thing. And this is where people are, I just wish I could clone myself, which is something I've said probably 1,000 times. And I think AI is such an incredible tool. I kind of see it as the first draft and helping me out with just getting that first draft done and streamlining things that way. And it's something that I'm actually using more and more. I'm starting a side business and I need to come up with a name. I know how everything looks, but I need to come up with a name. And I'm actually just bouncing ideas off ChatGPT because then I get to see things reflected back to me and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. That's really good. Oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. So I find it really helpful with that. And I think as well, especially if you are an entrepreneur that has really high output, which I know is me, I know is a lot of my clients, they are showing up in all of the places. And I think that we end up with such an incredible body of work, but we're not really repurposing things. And we feel like that we're continually having to come up with fresh ideas. And then because of that, we get fatigued. One thing I'll say with that is I can listen to any podcast of like Mel Robbins or Stephen Bartlett. It's so funny. They always use the same examples because they hit and the stories work. And I think business owners are the same. It's like we already have so much good work out there. And this is just a way for us to kind of, especially if we're using like ChatGPT, we can start to, I guess, repurpose good work. Like I saw something actually the other day on LinkedIn and it was a woman saying that she has a podcast or she has clients with a podcast and she took the transcript and she whacked it into ChatGPT and she had these really beautiful prompts where it's like, I want you to go through this and I want you to come up with like 8 pieces of content, and of that content, I want you to do this, this, and this. And I think that that's so incredible. I think if you're an entrepreneur, being able to do that, especially if you don't have a team yet, is amazing. But I think even if you are like a support person in someone's business, if you're like a virtual assistant or an OBM, like getting those skills yourself so that when you actually work with a founder that is doing all of this stuff and feels like that they're just on this like hamster wheel of creation, you can be like, you know what? I think we can probably put pause on a couple things because I've actually gone through, I've repurposed all of these things that you've done. And the cool thing is if you can learn to do that, the founder that hires you, they will just be so over the moon and it will probably be so unexpected. So I feel that there's really 2 aspects here. The founder can do that. And then if you are a support person, kind of like getting the skills yourself so you can learn how to do this with people's businesses.
Yeah, I think it's come a long way. In my business, I use it from a blank page perspective. So if I'm, particularly with writing, because I struggle with a blank page, I love writing, but I cannot start from scratch. And similarly, if I've written something, I'll pop it in and it'll just make it sound a bit better. And I'm just like, oh, thank you. That is a better way to say it. Well done. But I think it's like rubbish in, rubbish out.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's that process. And as you just said, like repurposing, if you can take the transcript from your podcast and it has your tone, it has your jokes, it has your manner, it knows who you're talking to, and it can repurpose well from there. But I think if you say, hey, write me a blog on this, then you're like, oh gosh, that starting point, like it needs a whole lot more info than that. So love that. So for everybody listening, how do they know if there's some opportunities to take their business from where it is into being a bad day business model? Like, whether it's automations and streamlining, looking at email, what are the opportunities that they can look around and spot? What's the low-hanging fruit for them?
I think the first thing is looking at, if you were to have new people find you, like just pretend that you're using Instagram to find people. You have 100 people come onto your Instagram account. How easy is it for them to give you money without you doing anything? Like if you were to take the weekend off and this would have happened on a Friday, are you going to show up to work Monday morning and you have clients booked, or have you sold things? And then on the other side of that, how stressed are you with the fact that you've had people buy something 2 days ago? Are they going to be nurtured, or are you going to be freaking out looking in your inbox with like 10 questions and a refund request because you didn't answer them over the weekend? So I think that is really two things to look at. Like if you were to kind of take a step back, does your business take a step back with you? Or is it something that you have set this up to be really quite sustainable? So I think that's two things to look at. I think another thing as well is there's a lot of data in emotion. And I need to remember this whenever I feel like I get a bit angry or shitty at something. And then I look at, okay, well, why is this happening? And can I do something to ensure that, this isn't a conversation that I have to have again, because now I have some automated systems in place to hold boundaries. Most of my income actually comes from self-paced courses, and most of it comes from Give Good Email. And we had a period where, and this is my wonderful CFO and I, who does a lot of my accounts, she would chase people up for payments. And we had this real process with chasing people up continually for payments. And it was really interesting at the time that I was like, oh, we've got everything right. Like I could look in Kajabi and I'm like, we've got automations, we've got the reminders in Stripe. What am I doing? And then I'm like, oh, hang on. We need to set the tone as soon as they purchase, that we have the expectation that if they are on a payment plan, that date is marked a month from now and that they have the money. And it's really interesting holding that boundary where it's like we could look at it, but we were doing things in I'm going to call like reactionary way, where it's like just before the payment's coming out and then when the payment bounces, but we were kind of doing things ahead of time. And this was so amazing. I think a lot of the time entrepreneurs would be like, oh, well, but I'm outsourcing that. Where for me, I'm like, well, I'm paying someone good money to chase this up. That's costing the business. That's eating into my profit. But it's also making my team member's day a drag. Like she's literally chasing up people who haven't paid. And I was like, I don't want her to look at her hours in her diary of my business and be like, oh, I don't want to do this. Like I want someone who works with me to be like, I feel really lit up and excited about this work, because it's like, if I don't want to do this, can I really expect someone else to want to do that? And it's like, if no, and it's work that no one wants to do, it's like, how can we automate that? So that's another thing as well. If you feel like that there are tasks within your business that people keep handing around, or it's kind of like, oh, I don't want to do that. Okay, amazing. Because this could be a real incredible opportunity for some beautiful email automations to step in and actually do that for you.
I love that. There's data in the emotion, because that also can apply to your team, right? So if we think of all the things that annoy us as entrepreneurs, being interrupted, someone saying, when am I going to get a pay review? Someone saying, when are you going to review my performance? I want to have a chat with you, blah, 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 blah. Actually, we could set up a really beautiful onboarding sequence in email when they start. And maybe we talked about it in an interview, maybe we forgot, but ultimately we know that these are the questions that people might have. So we could set that up as an onboarding thing as well. This is when you're going to get reviewed. This is when we're going to talk to you. This is when pay reviews happen. This is when you're going to have your performance review. This is where you can find, I don't know, holiday leave. What are the other questions that somebody wants to ask? So I love that, because that can apply to everything. So like, why is someone getting upset about this thing? And then what communication was lacking that ended up with them feeling frustrated or you feeling frustrated, as the person executing the boring task, the monotonous task, or as the founder thinking, I wish my team members, time wasn't being spent on that. Love, love, love. Okay. So who do you have on your team? Tell us a bit about behind the scenes in your business.
It's really funny. It's quite lean at the moment. I had an incredible virtual assistant and she was doing a lot more tech integration. So she would really do the tech side. And she decided she kind of worked with myself and 2 other entrepreneurs. And she was like, hey, I actually want to go back to just like employment. And I was like, oh, that's absolutely fine. And people ask me, were you freaking out? I'm like, no, I wasn't freaking out because we kind of had really good things set up. And I was quite fortunate that I had her doing things to drive the business forward, not maintain the business. That was all automated. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. This is fine. And I haven't actually had a virtual assistant for over a year, which I feel surprises a lot of people because they assume that I have someone. And I'm like, oh no, everything's really automated. One thing that I found was a real bottleneck for me, because we have so many payments that continually go out, we've got multi-currency, is I actually had brought my bookkeeper into my business. And I know I've had quite a few sessions with you. So I was like, I don't even think that you know this.
No, it's new.
Yeah. So I brought my bookkeeper into my business. And this was something that we've worked together since 2020. And I really broke my rule when I started working with her, which is, I had this with my studio where it's like, you never hire in a crisis because that's someone's first experience with your business. And I hired her in a crisis because my last bookkeeper had somehow misplaced 40% of my income in Xero. She was a client of mine and I rang her. I went into Stripe, got her phone number. I rang her freaking out because my accountant was like, you're an idiot. You don't know how to read a profit and loss. And I'm like, I know how much I earned. We had a launch. Sharon went in and she found the money like immediately. And she was so organized with the whole process. And she's like, do you want me to ring your accountant up? And she just handled it. And it's really interesting that I think like as business owners, this is kind of when we want to bring people into our business to support us. This is the kind of stuff that we dream of. And then over time, she's been someone that has had more and more responsibility to a point now where I actually have her coaching and working with my clients. So we have this really beautiful relationship where she really looks after the financial side of my business. She makes sure everything's reconciled. She flags things with me. We're at a point now, we're in a really, really lush financial position. When are we? We're at October. I have my last client finish up today, and I think I'm probably going to take the rest of the year off with client work. It's really funny that I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never had like spaciousness to a point where I could really not work until January and we'll be okay.
Good on you. You should be so proud.
Thank you. It's been a process to get here. But, we've got such a good relationship now that I feel so great with her working with my clients. So when I have my wisdom teeth out, she just took the call. She was handling things. She was in Slack. And again, this was something that just didn't happen overnight. Like we've been together since 2020. I tell her all the time, I'm like, you're my longest relationship. And it's something that just works so well. I think my next hire will be something to support creativity and probably like a videographer or someone that can kind of help me with content. Again, do I need an assistant? You know what? For now, I think that we're actually fine. But I think after we get someone in to do that, it'll probably someone to look after marketing and help support me in that way. And I think that I'll have a really beautiful little team.
What I love about that is it's like the proof is in the pudding. It's like you hired somebody who probably helped establish some of these automations. They moved into proactive mode. And actually, I feel like it's actually the telling of a really successful business when someone can leave and it's not a disaster. So truly, like, be proud of that. And I think that's amazing that you don't need an assistant because you're so automated, you're so streamlined, and actually you've just got someone helping you on this high value part of the business. And the fact that she's coaching internally as well for you probably just shows to your clients, this is how important finances is to me, that I'm going to bring this service in and share it with you. I love that. That's fabulous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about your behind the scenes, because I think it's so valuable for anybody at any stage of business just to hear it. I just think we don't talk about it enough. Who have you got working for you? Who did you have? How does it feel? Love it. So thank you so much for sharing that. You've obviously been in business for ages. You're amazing. You see lots of other clients and businesses behind the scenes of their business. To wrap up, is there 3 pieces of advice or 3 or 5 tips or something like that that you want everybody listening to walk away with?
Oh gosh, just 3. All right. Okay, here we go. I think the first thing is zoom out. I think a lot of us can think that we have a really bad business because we have a bad day or we have a bad week. I feel that, back when we started, a business was like a lifestyle commitment, and it was something that you did long term. And something that I see now, because the entry level to have a business is really simple, because you don't need a commercial lease. You don't need to have all of these big costs, that I think that sometimes people kind of have like one foot in and one foot out. And that's made bad when you've got a bad week and you think that you have a bad business. Zoom out, remember that you are doing this for the long run, hopefully, and that, we all have this kind of happen as well. I think sometimes that we think we can take things personally, and we like, oh, am I not good enough, or am I this? Or it's like, my business is in a huge co-working space where I think there's 500 people in the building. Some of them are bigger businesses that have like 20 staff, and this is just their Melbourne office. And it's really interesting that it's like, the bigger that you go, it's not a bad week, it's a bad quarter, or it's a bad year. And I think that it's like, if you can sustain a bad day or a bad week, or whatever it is, that is just such valuable training for you, and developing resilience, especially if you know that you have like a really big business within you. I think that's one thing. I think the second thing as well is to just have some separation between what you do and know that you are not your business. And I think that there's this twofold approach. This is something that, Sharon, my CFO, tells clients all the time, where she's like, the business's money is not your money. And I'll tell clients, I'm like, you are not your business. Like, if you have a bad day, or if you have a launch that falls over, this means nothing against you or your worth. Like, this is just business. And when you can have that separation, you do business better, because you can ask for feedback. You're happy to kind of innovate or try new things. So I think that that's something else as well. And I think the last one, I don't know if it's a bit of advice, but, I think that if you have a business, we are in such an amazing position to just wake up every day and go to our desk or go to our phone, wherever you're working from, and just decide in that moment that you can just change how things look, and change your destiny, or change your clients or your offers or whatever you're doing. And that if someone has employment, they don't have capacity to do that. I decided in 2023, with a month's notice, that I was going to buy real estate. I had this sense. And I was like, I think I want to buy something. There was an apartment for sale in my building. And I went upstairs. There was a mortgage broker. I spoke to him. And I think this was May. It's like mid-May of 2023. And he said to me, oh, look, we go on financial year. So you basically have 6 weeks to get your shit together if you want to buy a place. And everyone's like, you're mad. And I was like, this is the best opportunity. And I went and made more money in a 6-week period than I think that I have been. Like, it was just phenomenal. And I look at it and I'm like, if I had employment, how would I have done that otherwise? Where I saw this as, how amazing is it that I have a business and I am really in control of whatever happens. And, I think that if you wake up and you don't think that business is the best thing in the world, I think that you're doing it wrong.
I love that. You are so awesome. And congratulations for buying your real estate as well. I think I said that to you over socials. I was like, so huge. It really is huge as an entrepreneur, running your own business, to actually like the bank giving you money. Like, it's massive.
Oh, 100%. And I'm single as well. So sometimes I'm not looking good on paper.
Well, but this is your business is profitable enough. You're drawing a consistent wage that the bank goes, yep, okay.
Yeah.
That is something to be proud of. So well done, you. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing everything with us today. It's been such a beautiful chat. Where can everybody listening learn more, come and check out Give Good Email, and just get in touch with you?
Perfect. So if you head to my website, professionalbabe.com, all of the good and sexy things are linked there. You'll find my podcast, The Business Fondle. You'll find Give Good Email as well. And as always, hop on my mailing list, and I promise you'll have a good time.
Awesome. You're so awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Thank you.